Welcome, my name is Beth Sims from Whitewater High School, and I'd like to present to you my project of the data overview. Next, I'd like to point out all of the stuff that we're going to talk about in this project. We're going to look over the school demographics, the attendance, the discipline. We'll review and compare the EOC and the EOCT for the last 4 years. We'll talk about strengths and weaknesses and identify the action plan. Now let's take a look at our student enrollment. You'll notice that over the past 4 years, our enrollment has been very similar to around 1,500 students, ranging as low as 1,433 and as high as 1,514. At our enrollment by gender, you'll notice that the amount of males and females are pretty much equal throughout our student population. When looking at our enrollments by ethnicity, you'll notice that we have majority white students, black students, with some Hispanics, some Asian, and some multicultural races represented. Our enrollments by the percentage of economically disadvantaged have been as high as 18% and as low as 16%, kind of around the average of 17% of our school are economically disadvantaged. Our gifted population has also been on a steady decline over the past 4 years, but is still ranging around 20%. As I look at our enrollments for absent percentages, you'll notice that we have a very good population of students that come to school, with most of our population being out less than 5 days, and very few being out more than 15 days. You'll notice that in our retention rates, very interesting thing I want to point out is in 1 year our black retention rate was really high and the white was low, but then they swapped off the next year. But they're still pretty low compared to other school systems. Next, I'd like to look at our discipline data. And what you'll notice is that our discipline data is below 20% on everything and below 5% for our OSS. While it's seen a little bit of an increase, it's still a very low number for the population our school has. I'd like to look at a little bit about our faculty and staff. So the first thing you notice is that the majority of our staff holds a 5-year master's degree, with some people with a 6-year and even a few with a doctorate or some other type of doctorate. So we have a very highly educated staff. As we look at the teacher demographics by gender, you'll notice that the number of females is greater than the number of males, and you'll also notice a steady decline in the number of male teachers on our staff. Next, let's look at the years of experience. What you'll notice is the majority of our staff has between 11 and 20 years of experience. And the middle is definitely, we have a bell-shaped curve going on there, with the majority of our population falling between more than 1 and less than 30 years of experience. If we study the ethnicity, we'll notice that again, the majority of our teachers at Whitewater are white, with a few black and other races are also represented in our staff. Now I'd like to talk about the first year results that I've looked at, which is the coordinate algebra from 2014. This was the last year in which we had an EOC. And so what I've looked at is the percentage of students that do not meet, that meets, and exceeds. And I've compared Whitewater with Fayette County as a total and the state. And so again, what I notice is that we're definitely higher than the state in the areas where we should be, or lower, but we're kind of on par with the county, but there are areas that we could show improvement. So 2015 was the first year in which the state went to an end of course test for Algebra 1. And so we have 4 subcategories that we look at. We have beginning learners, developing learners, proficient learners, and distinguished learners. So we really want our learners to be in the last 2 categories, to be proficient or distinguished. The beginning learners, we want low numbers, and same thing for developing, we'd rather have low numbers there. And so again, I've compared Whitewater with the county and the state. And you'll notice that our beginning learners are definitely below the state, which we should be, but our developing learners are a little bit higher. Our proficient learners were greater than the state, and so are our distinguished learners above the state. We weren't above Fayette County for distinguished and proficient, but maybe that's a place where we could look for growth. As we go on and look at the 2016 results, you'll notice that we showed definite improvement with our beginning learners. Our numbers were very low this coming year. We were definitely below county and state. Our percentage of developing learners were above both of them, which again, we'd rather than be below, but we had a lot more this year of proficient learners and a greater rate of distinguished learners. If I look at those two categories together, that is above 50% of our population, which is kind of where we are aiming for and a goal we'd like to meet. You'll notice that I've given you the number of test takers that we've had in the state, the county, and at Whitewater. The last set of results that I've chosen to look at is from 2017. Again, I've compared Whitewater to Fayette County and to the state of Georgia. Again, we noticed that our beginning learners were, again, around 10% lower than state and county. Our developing learners did increase, and we had a slight decrease in our proficient learners. We're still definitely below the county about distinguished learners, but we are above the state every time for the distinguished learners. So again, this is an area where we could at Whitewater show some growth for our students. It does concern me that our percentages of proficient and distinguished is less than 50% this year, but again, it could be just changes that we've seen in the test. The last bit of demographic that I pulled together was just looking at Whitewater over the last 3 years in this EOC test and to see what we've done. You'll notice that we've decreased our amount of beginning learners, and we've gradually increased our amount of proficient learners. We need to still, I think, work on our distinguished learners and how we can bring them up to higher each year. All right, looking at some strengths first in that coordinate algebra, we were well below the students that did not meet for the state, and we were greater in both state and county at meets, and we definitely were greater at the state than exceeds. Looking at our Algebra 1 EOC, I can look at different things. Our percentages of state beginning learners were below the state. We were higher than state and county in all three categories of developing learners, and in all 3 years, we were higher at the percentage of proficient distinguished learners than the state. We have some work in our county, but we are definitely much better in the state. So in our 2015-16 EOC test, we showed strengths of developing learners, our proficient learners, and our beginning learners. The weaknesses that we need is we need to have more distinguished learners, and I feel that the combined percentage of proficient and distinguished learners is less than the county and is a place that is a weakness for us. So what can we work on next? Well, we can work on ways to find how we can increase our number of distinguished learners. We can find ways to decrease the number of our beginning learners. And we can also work on bringing our number of proficient and distinguished learners to above 50% of our population. So how can we go about doing this? Well, one of the ways we can do is we can look at the specific areas of our EOC data and look at areas that we can either remediate or accelerate our students in. One of the other things we can do is we can study the other programs with our county, figure out what is working to create a higher percentage of distinguished learners, and see what we can do to model that here at Whitewater. Again, I would like to thank you for the time that you've given me to present this data to you as a school, and just know that together we can work to achieve all kinds of excellence here at Whitewater.